have, I'm on mute, Elliot.
You're muted and your speaker turbo?
I'm muted. Yeah.
No, something's not.
Can you look at me for a minute, please?
Yeah. You're not muted.
so they could work this way for reinstated.
Why don't we review it maybe, how about we review it in January and see where we can go? Cheryl, can you kind of circulate for, so we can review it
Yep.
again, 'cause 2 months, who knows?
Yeah.
Things are going, but it's still-
Laura, then what is the protocol for visitors? I mean, that to me is a little. How do we intermittently request that visitors to fill out a screen?
They're still going to fill out a screener.
Okay. So the principals will. They will know that.
Yes.
Okay.
They're filling out the screener, it's going to a spreadsheet, and we're monitoring it.
So any visitors, mandatory, ongoing, not intermittent. No. Okay.
Well, there's like a span of time that it's covering when it's asking those questions. So having that like weekly periodic check-in is covering a span of time. Have you had any of these symptoms in this span of time, right? So a person visiting campus intermittently or, you know, a one-off visit, they're coming into the building, it would still have the same expectation because we're checking in with them based on that interval.
You have a lot of visitors, like I know, like I went to go pick up my daughter early or something and I don't go past the lobby.
Yeah, generally speaking, into the building, not very many. But we do have vendors that are working in some buildings at this point. So, you know, that would be something that we would need them to do.
So screening testing, we've been talking about screening testing where all staff, adults in the building must be part of our screening testing and they can opt out if they're vaccinated and they would have to show proof of vaccination. So this is just another layer of that work where we've been working closely with the county and the local Department of Health in making use of funding through the ELC COVID testing grant. And ELC stands for Epidemiology and Laboratory Capacity. So we're able to use this funding to reach out to vendors that the local Department of Health and county have identified who can provide the screening testing services for us. So that'll be really nice for us because those vendors will manage the entirety of the screening testing program. So right now I'm working currently with our attorney in reviewing the agreement. And it's very similar to the agreement that we did last February when we were able to test our athletes, do surveillance testing of our staff and students. It's just being updated and it will include this vendor. So I just want to put that on the board's radar that you'll be seeing this in a future board meeting to review and we'll be seeking approval. And Dutchess County got $5.8 million out of that grant. Just want to talk a little bit about full remote for Elm and Alden due to the contact tracing and the numbers of close contacts and COVID numbers. We made the decision of going full remote for a couple of days for Elm and Alden. And I thought we could talk about what went well, right? And areas that we may want to address moving forward. So Elliot, could you talk about just the technology piece and our readiness for going full remote?
Sure. So we have, we went 1-to-1 last year. It was kind of a patchwork quilt of whatever devices we had available. This year we have Chromebook tablets that are available for our kindergarten and pre-K students. We have Chromebooks issued 1-to-1 for all grades 1 through 12. We beefed up the network infrastructure last year. So the capability is there, the devices are there. The Chromebooks had not been introduced to the students yet when we made the decision to go fully remote. So we weren't going to send pre-K kids home with a device they never touched before. They just hadn't gotten to that point yet. We are looking at single sign-on solutions that allow us to use scannable QR codes for our youngest learners. We're actually going to roll that out for the entirety of Elm Drive Elementary. So all of our little learners from pre-K to second grade will be, their teachers will have little cards with a QR code in the student's name. They can wave it in front of the camera. It'll unlock their machine and go right into their applications. We can link other things to it. So the thought of trying to explain to a 4-year-old how to type their full email address, first name, last name, when reading is a bit of a challenge. Yeah, so we figured that would be a little bit of a time saver. And our tech team has worked with our regional information center to make that happen. So we're excited to roll that out. And we're getting them little styluses, so they'll be ready to go. So again, I would have loved to have all these little extra add-ons ready, but who saw, this urgency coming when it did, right? So the devices were there. We started introducing them to the students just this week. Mr. Sotero asked us to help get that going. And we'll be giving the QR cards out probably within this week or next week, so that should this come up again, all of our learners can grab a device, go home with it, or worst case scenario, if it's going to be for an extended period, we can have parents come pick them up. But devices, infrastructure, software, we are ready to roll in any sort of blended learning environment that we have to serve. We're going to give them to the teachers to hold, because the Elm Drive devices are going to live in the classroom. They're not going home daily. And that's to take it home, right? We would give it to the backpack at home with the student so that they could access it from home. And it's the kind of thing that we could always email to the parent if we had to. We have every teacher and Mr. Sotero have the roster of names and access codes, the passwords, if they need to give them to the different sections. And the parents, we can get that out pretty quickly. And like I said, worst case, I'll sit outside with the box and we'll hand out devices, and mom and dad can drive up and pick one up. We'll get them in the hands as they need to. But
just on the instruction side, that varied as well. The younger students, pre-K students, who want to describe how they picked up their.
Yeah, I mean, it was a drive-through pickup for students and places, so there was some things that could not use it. New K-3 reduction with some deliveries, which was really sweet and helpful to families who couldn't get there. So that was great. So they had other lessons prepared. I know that Mike has really been drilling, like, we are still in year 3 of the pandemic. This could at any point become necessary, so they were prepared. Yes, there were some photocopies and things like that that needed to be made, but they were prepared with that. I think there has been some confusion, mixed messaging. We did talk about the fact that there was not comfort with going hybrid again, but at no point did anyone say there wasn't a possibility of going remote again. That's just the world we're living in, unfortunately. So I think that there were some folks who kind of took their time setting up their Google Classrooms, and it led to a quick shuffle that needed to happen prior to that day where there was remote instruction. So it is something that we are reinforcing, the messaging that we need to be prepared for this. Yes, we understand that hybrid instruction is not currently, the model that is preferred, but there is nothing that says that we won't be remote at a moment's notice.
So you think we should be doing like, like we have fire drills, have a, remote drill, and if we gave, like, told the parents, because it's not something that you want to, in it, where it just shows up out of the blue like a fire drill. You want, but you do, if we told the parents, like, December 12th, we're gonna go full remote, just so everybody knows what we're doing, knows what to do, has their plans in place or whatever. Because it did make me nervous that it had been so long since we had done that. So long, but relatively long. We had probably pre-K and K had never been through it. The pre-K teachers had never been through it, not, at least not with us. So
yeah, and I think so one of the things that has become very apparent is that we're in a totally new paradigm, right? Things that we never thought we would have to prepare for before, or at least in a short amount of time, we have had to actually put into practice. So the continuity of learning plan has become something that we've never had to use in the past, knock on wood. And it was something that we had to use in a very short period of time, right? So the continuity of operations for all cases became something that became very real. It was always hypothetical and theoretical before. It became very real to us. So yes, I can tell you that in conversations after this remote day, we've been working with Mike and Tom where we're having conversations about should we be teaching lessons with students remote, device in hand, even though they're in the classroom where they can receive some support and sort of work through the motions of this. There are some things that can be delivered through that, mode of instruction, and it's something so that we can help, because some parents also, we have some households that do not have devices, right? So there are some parents who may not even be able to help their child. So how do we get our children accustomed to this should it ever become necessary again? So we have talked about that. I like your thinking, where unfortunately these are things we have to practice because we don't know when we're going to need them again. And I feel like with notice is obviously the optimal thing, but that's not how these things occur.
Yeah, I was just thinking, to me, the more we can, and I don't want to see us do like a week and a week on, week off, or some crazy thing like that, but just so that come the day that we need it for 2 days or 5 days or whatever it is, we know we just click and it's going instead of scrambling. Anyway.
Thank you. Do you want me to go over the gazebo information, just of what
Well,
I've had so far?
I think it's a good, this is what we've got.
Temperature, okay. So the numbers that I pulled were on Friday. So that was the 15th. And at that time we had 188 responses. I think I looked today and there were about 201 or two. So, but since Friday, this about 60% said demolish the gazebo and restore the area to grass. 36% approximately completely renovate and restore the gazebo. And 8% demolish the gazebo and purchase a prefabricated gazebo in its place. So those are just the numbers from the survey that was sent out to the community.
You gotta think of how many people this actually impacts. The people that in town are gonna be the ones that are very historical about it and feel it. And I think most questions that I've seen that have been asked is why it costs $55,000 per place. And I think that's information that we kind of have to put out there as far as, the slab. Everything from the concrete up to the top of the gazebo has to be restored. But that's why you're seeing that. If someone lives, over in Salt, 20 minutes away, they may not even see the gazebo.
Right. And also it might be interesting for the facilities committee to go through the comments.
Yeah.
There are definitely patterns and there are some good ideas and there's some confusion. So that may help inform, how it would proceed as well.
Well, and we know we have to do something. It's not like we can just ignore it and it'll go. Well, eventually it'll probably go away. But we just can't ignore it. So, and when I look at the amount of money, if folks can come up with a way of helping us do this, even if we, have to put in money that some, at least, that we're saving the structure. But anyway, so one more time.
About
55%,
56% demolish the gazebo and restore the area to grass. 36% completely renovate, restore the gazebo. And 8% demolish the gazebo and purchase a prefabricated gazebo in its place or somewhere on the property.
And I assume somehow they think that that's cheaper. I don't know if it would be cheaper or not, but I still think one of the options should be to look at, and maybe it's just later on, but a gazebo that's actually big enough to do something, like have a small concert or have the kids sing carols or I don't know, whatever. But right now that gazebo isn't really big enough to do much of anything. It's more of it's almost like a statue or a facility. But, all right.
Did we say that like so much had to be restored that it wouldn't even be so much the original one? Like, so like that's my only thing that we should maybe take into consideration is, if you got to to restore it.
Yeah.
It won't even be the old gazebo, you know, unless we did something else and, you know, if it's, you know, I think we talked about this, use part of it for something else.
I mean, honestly, I think the gazebo is more about, it's always been there, it's gonna stay there. You know, you go by there, 95% of the time, there's nobody in it or around, you know, they're not sitting there having you know, picnic or something. It's more about, it's been there as long as most people can remember.
Definitely has there one more winter.
Right, and it's, I mean, that's the key is, and I'm gonna try to reach out to the group of folks and find out where they are. But, oh, well, good. Well, we'll reach out to you in about, it's a little while. But it's, we gotta make sure, you know, the roof, it's not just a matter of cleaning it, and, you know. Anyway, we'll get back to the gazebo talk.
And then just lastly, the COVID-19 updates. As of on the 15th, they've changed. On the 18th, they changed significantly from the 15th when I gave the board the report. So right now, we have 57 close contacts, and we have 67 in tutoring, after school tutoring right now.
How many?
Excuse me?
How many in tutoring? How many in tutoring?
In tutoring, 67. Yeah, so it went up.
Not
significantly.
currently, but throughout the year, there have been 67 students.
Well, do you have 67 currently? Because I looked at that.
No.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no, some of them have finished their time tutoring, but 67 students have been provided with tutors.
So
How
have we,
many are not?
Well, currently it's just the last, so there was that portion of that group of students that were all out because they were remote.
Yeah.
And then other than that, it's just, I'm waiting for someone to take this last group of students.
Or does it seem a very high percentage of Elm Aldrich versus middle school? Is it, I mean, is it something that we've looked at as far as how, and I know it's tougher, don't get me wrong with the younger kids, but trying to implement a little bit more spacing in the younger groups? I mean, it seems like I've been very surprised with how many positives we've received in the younger grades. And I think, you know, common sense would say they're probably harder to kind of keep separate. But I don't know, do we know the percentages as far as between the schools?
I can find that out for you, but the higher percentage is in the elementary.
Right.
I mean, and I think it's due to vaccination as well, because there are different protocols around vaccination. So if you're a close contact with somebody who tests positive and you're vaccinated, you still go to school or you report to work, you're monitoring your health. If you're a close contact and you're unvaccinated, then the story changes, right?
Are we keeping track of where the close contact happens? Like, is it outside? Is it at lunch? Is it in the
Yeah.
classroom? Is it in the APR waiting?
Yeah, we create a line list, and that's which includes either the student or the staff member's name, addresses, where,
Well, I guess
the
I'm saying
location.
wherever the close contacts happen, are we seeing any trends like a lot of it's happening at after school pickup in the APR, or a lot of it's happening at lunchtime? Is there any option, like if we know it's happening in one place, and another separate?
Or on the weekends, they do a lot of it.
Yeah.
On the weekends when they're not in school and they're coming back.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, we may have that information, but we can't utilize that information. So say we know of like a birthday party or something and that has happened, we can only do what we know about in school. So something like that may allow it to proliferate because even those students are not being contact traced by us. The county would handle that. So our records would not show something like that because we only report what happens portal to portal when students are picked up on the bus until they're dropped off at home. So
It's like a
that's,
separate category. You could say,
yeah,
you know, gym 20%, this, that, and then
Yeah.
weekend 38%.
yes.
But at
And
least like David's point, if you see a trend,
Yes.
you can almost narrow it down, saying, okay,
Yep.
maybe we need to do something better in this area.
Line the kids up differently, plus, yeah, wherever the trends are.
It seems like we've done, you know, it's seen church in the last You
Yes.
know, in some of the classrooms, you know, the kids now, instead of just sitting where we want, we always do a certain.
Yes.
Yeah, we're potting, we're co-working.
So they do have seating charts on the bus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And in the
Still seems like
classroom.
More kids are caught in contact tracing issue. I don't know if that's true or not, but it feels that way. I don't know what percent for the contact trace last year.
Mhm.
Well, the lower grades, you're gonna get a lot more because they're probably around each other closer again, right? I mean,
Yeah, I just.
they're not as distant.
No, and I think it's too because they are out doing their stuff. Maybe last year, a lot of parents have other kids in sports and going to parties, and it was, you know.
I mean, I also think something to consider is that, you know, whereas in the past, they had to be 6 or 12 feet away, depending on where they were. Now it's 3 or 6 feet, but even though they are allowed to be 3 feet and masked, you still have to trace in some circumstances out to 6 feet anyway. So now it's just, I understand the looks, but that's, yes. So it's allowing essentially more people to be in that targeted quarantine zone, right? So whereas before it was 6 feet and they were at all times 6 feet or more. Now it's, well, they're permitted to be within, 6 feet in some cases, but then you still have to trace out to 6 feet.
And on the buses, they were every other bus.
Every other seat.
A lot of the seats.
Yeah, and now buses are allowed to be back this way, but you still have to trace to 6 feet. So some of the things aren't really helping in our efforts, like the things that we had done. I mean, and we're not seeing, many, thankfully, contacts who are then testing positive. We're not seeing a lot of that. So it's a very precautious surgical approach that we're taking to making sure that we are keeping everyone safe, but we're seeing more students quarantined because more students are now in that quarantine zone.
But it's allows us to be full-time in person, right? So that's the goal.
Can I just ask a question about the tutoring now? I wasn't sure. Who qualifies for that? And how is that? And is it just starting now or it's been going on?
No, it's been, and we have been doing our very best to get anyone that has been quarantined, we're doing our very best to get them a tutor. The trouble that we're running into is when you have a large group going out at once, it's going through my office, and I literally have one secondary teacher and 2 elementary teachers willing to do tutoring. And that's obviously, you can see the numbers. They don't have the time. I don't have the resources. So we're doing the best that we can to fill wherever we can. We did just appoint, or it's on the agenda right now under new business, I believe, to appoint 2 more. But we're doing everything we can to match, and people are doing groups, the tutors who are working for us, I do want to say publicly, like, thank you, because we don't have many people. They're taking groups of students. They're doing the best that they can, but it's an under-resourced area. And
Do the parents request it? Or is it like, we know that all these second graders are out, so we're gonna have a tutor do the second grade or, 8th grade or
Yeah.
whatever it is? Like, how do you?
no, anytime I become aware of a positive or a quarantine student, I've been reaching out to the tutors and trying to match them with as many as they can possibly take on. And we're doing the best we can. Some students have even returned to school and caught up. But like I said, I have 3 teachers district-wide who are able to do that. I have 1 substitute who can take 1 person a week additionally, and I have 1 additional help, but
I know we don't want to do hybrid. Is there an option to have just literally class part in? I know my son needs to learn to do stuff. He literally could just walk the class. It would have been
Or if the teacher, if somebody could just call and say, something good, or, I know the parent can also call it too, but it's the live instruction.
yeah.
I know nobody wants to go back. Children at home, were receiving live instruction, and now if you're quarantined, you might go 3, 5, 8, up to 8 days.
Yeah.
With
So,
no live instruction.
yeah, and so like Elliot said, we're prepared for that. It's just, it was a decision that was made and
But and to Carrie's point, like practicing, is it possible just to have the ability for a child in quarantine join morning meeting for 10 minutes, just to get that connection with their teacher, or during AIS, just to pop on.
yeah. So
little things
anything
like
can
that.
be done. There was a decision that was made over the summer, I think it was, or maybe it was the beginning of the school year, I'm not positive, to not do that. But we are prepared with they have the devices, we can do it. I mean,
I think the bigger thing was having our teachers trying to teach the class and then teach the camera and then teach the class wasn't working.
And that's why I said.
And I think if what David said could be done, where you just turn the camera on and the kid can log into the class, but the teacher isn't actually teaching, they're just teaching the classroom and somebody happens to be watching. They won't be able to ask questions, they won't be able to do those things, but at least they would, still be in part of the class. I mean, when we take out a full classroom, we know how to do that, but when and it just seems like we have an awful lot of these things. But I don't know, Elliot, I don't know what it would take to do that. And again, it's just, we can't go back to, well, personally, I don't think we should ever go back to where the teacher's trying to teach both, because it's just out of control, who's talking, who's, and the teacher's trying to figure out, is the kid even there anymore? But if especially for the students that would do it, because the other thing about remote was we had horrible attendance. For the kids that'll do it, just to listen in, if it's a matter of installing a camera and
It depends on the expectation of observation and interaction. So at a very basic level, right? Every teacher has, like I have today, I have a laptop plugged into the smartboard. Every classroom has the ability to do this. If the teacher's using the smartboard, it would be as simple as logging onto a meeting, and I'll just demonstrate here like we are right now, and sharing your screen with the Google Meet. As when Victoria gives her presentation, I'm going to do a screen share that the viewers at home would be able to see. So it could function as simple as this meeting is being broadcast to the public, except during in a Google Meet, whether or not that teacher can entertain a question from the child at home. That's something that we'd have to look into. What the child. Correct. And if we're going to go hot mic and we don't mind if the camera's looking at the wall or me profile while I'm addressing the class, that's easy enough. If we want to have a camera where the student can see their classmates and the teacher, then it's a physical installation that's going to be a monetary investment.
Can we really show the numbers? Is there a possibility of getting Dutchess County numbers where I want to?
Those are definitely the connection.
So this is all Dutchess County? This is
Oh, Dutchess County,
Yeah.
from Dutchess County.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure.
Because, like I said, I went to the Dutchess County board meeting and it just doesn't, now, granted, board members, and that's all that was there, don't really have solid knowledge of what's going on every day in every classroom. But the tone that I got from the other districts was, it's not that bad.
Well, maybe they don't have a lot of cases. That
Well,
doesn't mean
that's-
that they don't have a lot of quarantined people from each of these cases.
In both cases, they made it sound like it was very, very few. Tipsy said they've never had a case of COVID. I did question that in my head. I was driving down the New Jersey Turnpike and I didn't want to crash my car, so I just let that one go. But it just sounds like, this is Arlington and Wappinger. They have, they have numbers, but it doesn't seem like they go, they have like the same number as we do, only they have 10 times the students. So I don't know, if we can get Dutchess County so on the side, just to look at. All right.
Or keeping turn the computers on.
I think we should, yeah. Just to see, you know, if we turn the camera on in the class, so that somebody could just log in and listen. What would it take, and would the teachers union be okay with that? I know they won't be, they're not okay with recording them, but you know, would they be okay with it? And how far would they be willing to
You
go?
know, especially when we're at the point now when we have the shortage. I mean, if that improves, and, you know, there's only 10 people quarantined, you have enough to cover that. But when we scale higher than that, we just need that, you know, can't have them sitting home staring at the wall for 8 days. You know, let's face it, getting assignments sent to you and everything else where you're not getting instructions, difficult, you don't know that. So I would at least ask the question.
We'll have a conversation. Thank you.
Can I just, I'm sorry, about the tutoring, I'm just kind of confused. So like, I'll be, my daughter was quarantined, right? And there were 3 days and it was, I don't know how much I could say, but I know other kids that were, and none of us got called about a tutor. So that's, I'm just confused, and I totally get it that you're short staffed. I'm just confused about the process of who gets one and who doesn't, I guess.
So, and I will say a couple of different things about that. One, the board policy does state that nobody gets tutoring unless it's an absence of 10 days or more. We have been making the greatest attempt to provide whatever tutoring that we can, knowing that students will be out for a period of time, whatever that period of time is, right? So for an elementary student, it's 1 hour of instruction a day. And that, again, that would only be after, like, knowing there would be 10 days after the 10 days, et cetera. For a secondary student, it's 2 hours per day, so a total of 10 hours a week. So that being said, there was also some uneven implementation in buildings of getting the tutors, being able to arrange those tutors. And because that wasn't happening in all places, it's now come back to my office. So now there is one person trying to arrange all of this because it wasn't happening in some places. So I don't know when Catherine was quarantined exactly, but I can tell you that since it's come back, we've done the very best we can to match students with tutors. If there's a gap that needs to be made up and I have a tutor, I'm happy to try and make that up for them.
But if they're only quarantined for 10 days, they wouldn't qualify until the last day.
Right.
10 days for a tutor. So how are these people getting tutored? I'm not being, like, I totally get it. I'm just really trying to wrap my head around it because I've been asked by a bunch of parents in the community too. So like how, because I think some people were like, we've heard about these tutors, none of us got called for tutors. And I'm like, we don't have enough tutors.
Right. So I've set up a protocol where now anyone who is quarantined, their name is being sent to my office so that I can follow up on it. Because if I'm not aware of someone being quarantined and the building isn't matching a tutor, then no, that wouldn't be happening. So now it's going through one place, which has become an amazing undertaking. But at least now I know I'm constantly in there, constantly emailing the tutors, trying to match people with a tutor.
So they don't have to wait for 10 days. So it could be like,
We haven't been doing that because the way that we're looking at this is like, it could be 7 days now, depending on, you know, when in that 10-day period, the student is actually, you know, contact traced. And then they could be back in school for 2 days and be exposed to somebody else and be out another 10 days. So it's really not instructionally sound to not provide anything, which is why we're attempting to do anything we can to keep students as up to date as we can with their classes. So we're trying to go above and beyond what is actually required by policy to be able to keep students as, you know, current with their studies as best we can. You know, one of the other things that we have struggles with is in the secondary schools, you know, we have some highly specialized classes, an AP physics class, something like that. If I have, you know, a elementary special education teacher, I don't know what they're going to, unless they happen to have a background in physics personally, I don't know what they're going to be able to help a high school physics AP student with. But in some cases, I don't have the availability, but where we are able to give it, we're doing the very best we can to do that. And sometimes it's taking a few days because those tutors are already committed to other students. And then it's like, they will be in contact when they can.
Caroline, I know we're going to talk about the policy for 4,000 later. But I'm looking at homebound instruction, 4327. I don't see 10 days. I see homebound instruction as a service provided to students when I'm unable to attend school due to medical, emotional, or disciplinary problems.
Yeah.
And then it says secondary students receive instruction for 2 hours per day. Elementary students receive 1 hour per day.
So that might be the updated
Yeah,
policy.
I'm looking at these, that's a new,
That's it.
right,
Policy, it's not an effect.
That's the point of that.
So going forward, you're okay with taking that out completely? Well, even close to it.
It's not me,
Okay.
right? I think students, yeah, I mean, I think, it's in students' best interest, right? To be able to do that. I'm not sure that COVID, this type of volume is not likely to persist post-COVID, right?
But even.
So-
Making it a policy and making it available, like, is on 1 day with told, is, or left 2 days early to go to Florida to see grandma, or,
But that's not a medical
But
reason, right?
I'm just saying, I mean, I think, hey, anytime you're out of school, you should get a tutor. That's just, the burden is gonna kill us. I'm not sure how that was one of the things I wanted to bring up when we go to the first reading.
And it's a very common, 10 days is very common in school districts. It's a pretty typical number.
Right, I was just trying, I didn't know where that,
Yep.
where that was. Okay.
Yeah, our current standing policy is 10 days,
from 1995.
but it is the current policy.
Yeah, it says the physician was certified that the student is expected to be unable to attend school for 10 consecutive days and that she is capable of receiving.
Mhm.
But again, this goes back to the point that we brought up before, as I'm reviewing something new. Where would I know that with an old, it's the current policy?
You have to have the old one side by side.
Right.
Well, that's why we.
Did you attach the actual document from that showed the revisions? I saw one.
Yeah.
There, I did, they're tracked.
It was the second one.
Yeah.
Last two was the revision by- It doesn't.
Okay.
And the goal is to
Maybe
have these
that's-
online so that everybody has access to them.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yes,
I didn't realize.
Okay,
that's all I have.
all right. Let's do this, the data analytics.
Victoria's Secret.
If I ask for a motion to move the public question and answer, does anybody have a problem with that?
No.
Can we modify the agenda to, let these folks do their piece? I mean, I know they're just fascinating. But, I have a motion. For a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Yes. You're up.
My name is Ashley Lemke. I think I emailed a couple of you who are on the board about this last week. And I just wanted to give you an update on our end. So last week on Thursday, the 13th, we had a very informal meeting at the Vivo. It was kind of just like Facebook word of mouth, and we ended up having like 20 people come. And luckily, a lot of them are tradesmen, we have painters, we have woodworkers, we have stone masonry. I mean, we have everybody across the board. Concerned citizens, people that have been here for generations, including my family's been here since 1912. And there was such an outpouring in the community that it's very apparent that it should not be knocked down. So we formed this group called the Friends of Citizen Rollout. And at this point, we're willing to do anything in our power to keep it from being knocked down. So wanted to come here, talk to you about that, see how we can connect, what the next steps are going to be. And I have a couple questions to follow up on that, just based on some things you said earlier. So first of all, about the survey that you sent out. Do you know what percent, first of all, how many did you send out? What percent actually answered that? Because I think having that QR code might have thrown a large population off because I don't think a lot of people still know how to use the QR codes, even though we've been dealing with them all through COVID. So I'm just curious to know what percent of people actually answered that survey from the amount that you sent it out to. Did you said only 188 answered, which seems like a very low amount.
Approximately 7,000 surveys went out.
Okay, so only 180 people answered it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's
a little over
personal,
200.
that's not good. I mean, that's like a surefire sign that it didn't really work. Yeah, okay. Secondly, I'm wondering if you can present the quotes that you received for store this. How many did you get? Did you get one? Did you get two? Did you get three? Can we see a breakdown of how that was done?
Okay.
Is that something we could get
I
also?
don't know if we can share it. No. Yeah, I don't think we can do that.
Okay.
How many did we get?
It was one to inform whether we were going to go out to bid.
Right.
Right.
So we,
Right.
right,
So we have to basically say, what would somebody charge us? What would be like, you know, and then we get that back and then we say, geez, that's a lot of money.
Mhm.
Or, man, that doesn't look too bad. Now let's actually send it to contractors. And see what they would come back.
There is any way to kind of, without giving them specific, the actual agreement, to tell them what was needed and what the cost would be. I'm just curious, just because I think that was eye-opening for us, the facilities committee, just to say, wow, that's, seems costly, but I'm just saying there might be more people that need to get involved if it's more than just the woodworking. Well, I understand. I mean, it's foundation or it was a little more. I mean, we'd have to actually have, an inspector go over it. Yeah. And say, these are all the things, and then at the end, certify, because that's part of the point is, somehow the district that ended up on district property. And, we're liable for anybody that falls through the railing or thing falls off the roof or whatever. But that initial one was, I don't know, do you have?
I have it on my list, yeah. I'll look for that.
Okay, that would be great. And then you also mentioned earlier that you would somehow be at least willing to put in that 7,800, which is to knock it down and for the back.
That was me
Yeah.
saying. No, I'm not willing to put it 70.
Right, but
But
that money would
thinking
be
about,
there.
to me, the thing that made sense was the cheapest option we had was whatever it was, $7,800 or $8,000. If we can save the thing and keep the cost, why wouldn't we? But that needs to be voted on by the board.
Mhm.
We need to put together, and we don't need to make this decision like now as to are we tearing it down or not. We just need to, and that's why I'm glad Anthony texted me. No, I was wondering, that's why I put it on the Facebook page. Please go fill out the survey.
Mhm.
And we'll need to come up with a plan and say, if you guys are committed and we figure out how to get that commitment that, at the end it's going to be inspected and maybe we do the materials. I don't know. We need to put together something like that.
Right, so you're willing to work with us to.
I mean, I think so. I mean, we can't spend 50 grand to bring that thing back to where it was. But I don't see any reason why we wouldn't,
Okay, I mean, I just in the 4 or 5 days that we had this first meeting, whatever you want to call it, gathering, so many people have come up to so many different people in the town that are involved with it. And they're anything you need, I'll help you. I'm willing to do anything. So many people have stepped up to the plate. I'll donate money, I'll donate materials, I'll donate time. It's just really incredible. And I think that's just enough to show you that it can get done. And I don't have that in my mind.
No, and that's why I brought it up when we first got started during the presence report. You know, seeing what you guys were posting, seeing the picture of you all out there by the gazebo that was posted somewhere. You know, seeing the activity to me was, you know, it's sort of like why we live in Millbrook, because things like this get taken care of. But we've been talking about this for a long time, just all cards on the table. We've been talking about this gazebo for a year and haven't heard a word from anybody saying, oh, wait, we'll have, you know, nobody's coming forward to help us with the gazebo until you vote.
Well, I think what caught my eye was the survey that went out in the mail.
Yeah.
And I think Elizabeth posted it on Facebook, and then I was like, wait a second. Just with everything going on with the Senate and the foreign building, and I think a lot of people in the town are just really concerned that it's just becoming like knock it down. And if we can prevent it, we will. So the survey actually is what really kind of triggered it for me anyway. I had no idea it was even a discussion a year ago. I mean, I don't know how we would have.
I think we were trying to figure out like what the property was, you know, like where it's at and.
Yeah, we kind of thought it was partially the village's property. And then the surveyor came and said, you know, like there's about a 3-inch by 12-inch piece that belongs to the village and everything else belongs to us. So can we set up a subcommittee to just go work with these folks? I mean, probably, well, why it wouldn't be, but maybe Mike and you know, work on this thing as some sort of, and then come back to us with a recommendation.
Do any of you want any other questions?
Actually, I do just want to say that.
Could you, I'm sorry, I should have done this already. Your name and your ad.
Oh, my name is Ashley Lempes.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I emailed.
Dooney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
My name is Kevin McGrain. I actually, a couple of years ago, approached the previous superintendent about raising money for the gazebo. So it was something that was on the table before. And Laura, when you first came in, I met you, and he actually mentioned to you that there was somebody that was willing to raise money for it. So it's not something that was never thought about. I just wanted to put that out.
Can you ask a question as far as just what for those who don't know in the public that are listening, what is the historical significance other than it's been there all my life? Is there another significance to the deal?
They think it was designed by James Ware, who designed Mohawk Mountain House and Bennett College and a couple other buildings in Millbrook, who's a really renowned architect. And there's a little confusion on when it was built. It might be connected to the house on Maple Avenue. I don't know if anybody knows where they live. It's like a brown shingle house. It was used. There's loads of pictures that, you know, we're hopefully gonna make a website and social media. It was used back when Millbrook had the Millbrook Millionaires baseball team, and that's significant. And I think a lot of it is growing up in Millbrook, using it and spending time in it is also significant. But as far as the architect and, you know, the history, I think it was early 1900s it was built. And I just think it has a presence in the town as being a historic piece of architecture.
Early on, somebody, and I couldn't tell you who, but somebody came to us that there was a big discussion going on with the whole Thorn building and Bennett and all that, that they wanted to move the gazebo either down to the village green or and all the way down to the, you know, the new Bennett lawn or whatever the park's going to be called. And then, you know, that just sort of disappeared. I don't know really what happened to that. And then we started, you know, and really it's been, I think the last 5 years, it seems to really be falling apart because it needs, you know, it needs work. So how do we do that? Do we need a motion to create a subcommittee, or can we just do it?
You know, let's do it by motion, so we make it.
Yeah.
So I guess we don't need to say like how many people. We just need to do it. So a motion to create a subcommittee to deal with the gazebo. Go a second. All right, any discussion? Other than which one of you guys?
I think we might have one more. Allison, did you have a comment?
I'm Allison Meyer. I just wanted to mention, along with the millionaires scenario, that the history is that like 2,000 people used to show up on Saturdays right in that area behind what was the YMCA. The village hall was YMCA, built this YMCA in 1914, I think it was 15, 13, something's right in there, which was quite a facility for the village to begin with. And people came all around. If you read some local history books, they talk about coming from Hyde Park or Amelia, that kind of thing, for a Saturday afternoon baseball game. And there were a lot of baseball players, or at least a handful of baseball players who really went on to bigger time baseball. And so it's a little bit of an iconic figure for Millbrook too. And the central part and what Millbrook is all about. So it's not just something that was, we should stop off.
Oh, no matter how long this Millbrook school district owns that field, as long as you're watching.
It was. There you go.
All right, so any discussion on that motion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any again? Okay, so who's gonna do this?
I don't know. I'll do it with Dave.
Okay.
I don't think it'll be many meetings.
Okay. All right. So you guys go figure out, get a list of names and let's see what we can put together. Okay. All right.
Okay,
Very
sorry,
good.
you should the contact.
If they contact me, if your group, if you contact me, Cheryl Sprague, the district clerk, I can get you in touch with them to.
Sorry, what's your name?
Cheryl Sprague, district clerk. You can find me on the website.
Okay.
And then I can get you in touch with Chris and David and set up some meetings.
Okay. That would be great.
And I just want to personally say thank you. I mean, to see Millbrook step up yet again and take care of things like this and help do, what's the right thing versus the cheap thing. Thank you very much. All right. And tell Anthony I called twice.
Thank you.
Oh, you guys?
Yeah, no, we're not part of that.
Okay. All right, well.
That's interesting. My name is Krista Frago. I live in the village in the town. We have a second grader and a fourth grader. And we have like the hideous bad luck. We are in quarantine number 4 of the year. And you guys kind of touched on a little bit of it, and I apologize if I'm sort of, if you hashed it all out on my way over here, and maybe it's moved. But I just wanted to kind of formally ask, because it's very unclear to me, sort of whether there is a plan or a protocol in place for instruction for kids that are in quarantine. I got a sense that there really isn't. Just personally, 3 out of the 4, we had absolutely 0 live interaction with anyone. Sure. Thank you.
Sorry.
How are you?
No, don't worry about it. You'll be good. Sorry about that.
That's fine. And one was glorious because it was the entire class. So, there was, learning every day online. So I just feel like we're getting more and more concerned about the loss of instruction. And I heard from Caroline today, and I heard again, obviously there's some tutor shortages. And so I just don't think we should be relying on that if it's not a viable option. So I don't know if this.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit earlier, and going back to where the teacher's trying to teach the kids in the classroom, the kids at home is just a mess. But we did talk about, are there other options where they could just watch the class? They don't need to you know, maybe they can't, you know, interact or, you know, raise their hand, but maybe it would be a way to, I don't know. So what we've asked for is to get a set of recommendations, including like when we go to full remote, how are we, you know, are we ready when we have to shift over to a whole classroom or a whole school? So, yeah, I mean, that's what we need to figure out, because it, you know, we had there was a discussion before about the number of quarantines we've had, the number of, you know, cases we've had. It just, I don't know, just seems like it's getting worse.
The one thing we didn't talk about was parenting, and I'm sorry, Mark, I just forgot me. You know, if a kid is quarantined once, you know, does someone that's quarantined once or 4 times, does 4 times get priority over the one? No, I didn't even really think about that as far as, I mean, if you're missing 4 different, you know, 10-day classes, that's a lot of lessons you're missing. So do they take, and I know we're limited and everything else. I'm just pointing it out. I don't know if that's taken into account.
Yeah, and no, I mean, it's a valid point. So one thing I can say is that could be something that we look at. It could also be true that if it's a 5th grader and we have 3 other 5th graders who already have a tutoring session planned, they might be able, one of the tutors might be able to just squeeze another 5th grader in differently. And I still might be waiting for someone to commit to another student that's like off the grade level, you know?
Right.
So
I don't know what else to say other than we're absolutely doing the best we can to try and match students with tutors.
Maybe if you could just take a look at, you know, is there a way to just tie in, you know, I mean, if that's a simple answer that we can do fairly quickly, you know, because I mean, when we first started, when we were talking about this in June and July, it looked like things were getting better, you know, like a lot better. And all of a sudden, you know, we go back to school, and maybe, I don't know who said it before, but maybe we've got to stretch out. And I know that it says we can do 3 feet. Maybe 3 feet's not enough. Maybe we need to go back to 6 feet. And I don't know how we do that with the space we have, but we've got to be, I don't know, there's going to be some end in sight to this.
So I'm here for the same reason. My name's Catherine Martin Miller, and I'm here for the same reason that both our sons right now in quarantine are in the same class. Is it possible just to have one designated teacher who does purely quarantine children? They can get the lesson plans, which usually are posted in advance from the teachers, just to interact with students, because some students just don't do well remotely. They're simply watching class, which is better than not. It doesn't necessarily help all students. And, you know, I've had some cases where, you know, one child has only had 1 full week of school this entire school year, and 1 full week, which is incredibly appalling. It can't be helped, it is what it is, but for that one child who's only been in school 1 full week, what resources are there for them?
Well, that's what we were talking about earlier.
We did talk
Yeah, I apologize for not being here
And
for that.
just being able to find the number of tutors we need.
Yeah,
And
but
so
we're not
we-
finding them, so we gotta
Yeah.
Well,
go back to
hopefully
the drawing board and figure out how to, I mean, happening now, I mean, we're far into this pandemic, we're far into the school year, and it just seems bizarre to me that we don't have sort of a protocol in place, and I get it, there's different situations for different things, but.
Well, that's I mean, if we can't get tutors, then then the only other option I think we have is some sort of remote, you know, you can watch it, or you can, or maybe we have to go, I don't know, I don't want to say go back to, you know, to this hybrid mode where the teachers are trying to teach, you know, a class and make sure the kids are still in the class, and they're teaching the kids in the classroom, but the kids on the thing are interrupting because, you know, they don't realize that they're cutting everything out.
I don't think we're reinventing the wheel here, nor should we. Laura, did you contact other districts? You know, we can't be the only one in this county that's experiencing this problem. To see what other districts are doing.
Yeah, some are not offering anything. Some are offering after school tutoring. Some may have an online teacher model. So we talk about it on a weekly basis because there are challenges and successes with all of them.
Mhm.
So
And we've looked into we looked into bringing in a full-time person. And I know that you had contacted about like certification areas and stuff. It's not, it's not that easy to just bring in one person and have them service the whole district either. But definitely a great
Well, one
idea.
person could it's certified to do elementary,
Mhm.
right? And then you necessary, then of course, if you bring in a second person to do your upper level. So it's an option.
Yep.
We just gotta make sure we actually have the
So
money to
you-
pay
so
for
you
it.
can
Yeah,
hire them.
That's hiring another person. So,
In the meantime, you have to do something. You're right. We can't let students just sit out for
mhm.
all but 1 week of the school.
Absolutely. And I mean, just to be clear, the tutoring would only ever be virtual. We cannot knowingly send
No.
someone to a quarantined. Yeah, that it would have to be virtual.
Can do where the student just logs in and doesn't have to see the teacher right there. I wonder if that maybe even takes some of those off kids from the tutor. You know, if maybe somebody just needs it because they're not in there at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Questions.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think also, I'm sorry, being really nitpicky, but there has to be better communication from the district. So we were told Sunday afternoon, which is great, that, the next, to 8 days, I think it is, our sons have to quarantine. But we were told by the contact tracer that the tutor would reach out to us first thing Monday morning. I came to the school, I emailed and I called, and even the school office said, well, unfortunately, we don't know anything about that. The person in charge was in yet, we can't ask them. Heard nothing. Still haven't heard anything. So it is a little bit frustrating. We heard from the teachers at the end of the day Monday. Obviously, they just informed, so they were scrabbling. It's not a comment on them at all. But we can't be told from the school office and contact tracers that the tutor will be in touch when clearly that's not the case. There just has to be better communication, and if a plan is in the works, which obviously it is, that has to be communicated to me. The last contact we had was from Laura, September 29th, about the shortage of tutors, but no plan B that you were looking into at that time. So that's, I think, part of the frustration is obviously the loss of education. There's also this no information about what's being worked on to satisfy that need. So I think that would really help solve some issues too.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all can agree it's universal. You get more and more frustrated the longer you don't hear anything. So even if we're being told we don't have tutors, at least something, as opposed to just sitting at home with our kids kind of wondering, should I do the work with them? Should I wait for the tutor to surface?
Can I ask, was it the contact tracer from the school that told you?
Yeah.
The tutor, okay, not the Dutchess County person.
No.
So can you guys come back to us at the next meeting and give us some ideas? I mean, if it means we gotta install some new stuff, tell us how much it is, rough order of magnitude. If we gotta go, I don't know, we'll try to find another teacher, what's it gonna cost us? Just give us an idea of how we can improve this, because obviously it's not getting any better. I mean, it's just not. I keep hearing that it always seems to have turned the corner, and it seems to have turned the corner in the wrong direction. So,
Simplest things like setting up a C-SPAN and a child. Even if the child has no interaction with them. But again, that has to be checked.
and then maybe, maybe an hour of tutoring is fine, because they've already, maybe the tutoring comes in the afternoon after the class day or something, I don't know. But just, we've got to relook at this because, despite all our hopes.
Not just what we do.
I have one last question, I think. So is there for instance, on my daughter's last day when it was her entire class, 3 kids were able to they had just were lucky enough to be out the day that. So those 3 kids then got their teacher. That is not.
Say it again, a little louder.
The last day of my daughter's born, 3 kids were able to return in person because they happened to have been absent the last contact day of the majority of kids. The 3 kids returned to class. So then their teacher taught that class in person, and the 18 at home were just on their own.
And are you saying, how did that structure happen?
I'm just curious how that decision, like, is there like the 3 kids were there, they get the priority over the 18 at home, or,
So
is
that-
there a conversation? It just didn't seem to make sense.
And that goes back to the not providing hybrid instruction.
But that's not because
Because they,
there's one second grade that I know of, because I went there to watch, nothing was wrong. That was all remote.
I think that you're talking about the same thing, and I think that some students what you're saying is some students were able to return because when that contact happened,
Right.
a couple of students
Well,
had
no, I
not been
understand
in
that,
school.
But he wasn't out of school, he was on.
Right.
Thursday, Friday, yeah.
Yeah, so then the remote stopped when a couple of students came back to school, is what you're saying. So instead of,
got it.
it,
I don't know.
I heard my daughter say, because the teacher, we logged on from 8:15 to 8:45. That's sort of discuss what the kids should do. And my daughter said, how many kids are there? And she said, I'm gonna have 3 kiddos. So that's just how I came to that.
That's really concerning. Because it becomes an equity issue where children are in person and there's only 3. Their quality of instruction increases exponentially, while the children at home that are not receiving any live instruction, right, the gap becomes so. I mean,
So you guys will come back to it? Because, I mean, I think it's all gotta be, if only if 18 kids didn't get remote learning that day, they're not ready. Probably have to practice.
No, this is practicing, you were saying there is no hybrid.
Right,
So
but
maybe the tutoring, at least that's how tutoring is it.
but the kids were, what's their, why didn't we send those 3 kids home?
Determines close contacts.
no, they were,
Oh.
and they had completed their quarantine and returned to school because I think it was like a Friday, they had been absent the Friday, then there was a weekend, so those kids could actually return to school based on a Thursday date versus a Friday date or something like that. So they were back 3 days earlier than
Let's
friends.
just go through it, because, I mean, it seems pretty simple that you just say, look, I'm glad you come back 3 days early, but you're not going back 3 days early, stay home and do everything remote. I mean, if we, but
I don't think legally you could refuse education.
we just say though, you're not refusing anything, you're teaching them all remote.
I think it makes
Instead
more
of,
sense.
having the 21 kids home. That hybrid model was completely right.
No, I understand, it's difficult, we don't want to do it, we have a rare circumstance where 75% of the kids are out.
Yeah.
That might be the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even the 15 to 45. To me, the common sense thing was just keep the kids on. You know, like I thought about, and then instruct the 3 there, but you're leaning a little bit more at 17 kids, it's not more too. But, you know, that's the gray area of hybrid and all that. I understand.
So take it apart, come back to us.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, the plan was that we thought tutoring would be the answer, but it's not working, so we need to change it. So we will come back and discuss it with the administrative team and with our teachers and see if we can generate some ideas that are good for our kids.
And we just, give us the options. See what we can say for.
And still, I just wanted to address the issue of tutoring, that they haven't heard anything. Is that,
Caroline did write,
okay,
but not.
I haven't heard anything from anybody, just like calls, emails and in-person visits. I don't live locally in the village, I live 15 minutes drive away.
so you can just make sure that she gets the tutor for, so your child is still in front.
Yes,
They're not,
I mean, not that I'm gonna say yes, definitely get a tutor, but we can look into that.
Well, we are appointing some more tutors tonight, so I'm doing the best I can to match it. The one thing that's good is that the majority of the students are from one grade level, so it should be easier to find at least somebody who can do a group of students. The one thing that I can tell you is that if it takes time and the students return before their tutoring hours are over, we can continue the tutoring after school to get them caught up.
All right, so we'll hear from you guys next. The next board meeting.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your
Thank
time.
All right, we'll go back to the original agenda, which we had supervisor of data analytics and professional development.
Oh, there we go.
Or you hurry or did you?
Yeah,
She does exist as well. I know she does.
I'm like your own personal Siri or Alexa. You're on. So hello. So today or this evening, I wanted to highlight the idea of the data portion of my job here. So another time, definitely we can go over the PD portion, but for today, the data portion. So in that moment, there's two facets. One is the DDC work or the district data coordinator work. And also just a point of caution, there's so many acronyms in the presenter's notes. I tried to spell every single one out just to make sure we all feel good and we're on the same page. So the DDC work is one facet of the data work. And then the other side of data work is like what teachers use to make instructional decisions. And I guess what we use to help support teachers in making those instructional decisions. So first, I'm going to talk about the state reporting. And then second, I'll talk about more fun stuff, as I like to say. Okay, so here's the best flowchart I've ever come across that explains SIRS. So at the start here, you have our source systems, and they are what feed level 0, and that goes to 1 and 2. So most people have that kind of general understanding, but I'll go a little bit deeper. So we have a school tool, right? And we have Envision as a financial, and we have IEP Direct that warehouses are classified students with disabilities and 504 information. So all that goes into what's known as level 0. And that's a receptacle that, or a repository that the Mid-Hudson Regional Information Center, or the RIC, has for us. So we put all those files in there and you get kind of level 0 errors. That then flows to level 1. So for those of you who will be on the district data committee, we'll get to look at a lot of level 1 stuff. Level 1's awesome. It's run through Cognos, which is an IBM product. Beautiful visualizations of data, really nicely done. And our RIC subscribes to WiniRIC, which is, they roughly do about a quarter of the state inside that data warehouse. So it's really beautiful. If you're into data, it's pretty good. And considering what we pay for it, it's awesome. So the kinds of stuff that's in level 1 that you can look at: attendance, suspension, everything about testing you could ever want to know is in there. That's really nice. As I said, that feature that they put Cognos on. That is new, maybe like, I mean, max 3 years old. Before then, it was like static, everything's a CSV or Excel that you pull out, and it's not, as beautiful. So that's level 1. One of the fun.
Where all the reference information, the student ID and the student's whatever address and the parent's name.
Yeah.
That's all in level 0.
So yeah, we put that on to level 0, but there's some systems that that say like, yes, that's correct, or no, that's not. So one that you're seeing here, oh, should I, Elliot, can you How do I
Turn the side button on.
turn the side button on? So this here is a NICES queue. So there's some in the NICES. What exists is students' IDs, parents' names, house information, and also FERPL data. So free and reduced price lunch information that comes from different state systems. So this comes into play. Millbrook doesn't have a lot of students that come in and out, but you have seen quite a bit now with movement from the pandemic. So what could happen with this for here would be a student comes and want to come to our awesome school district, which is great. But in the city, they had a different local ID. Up here, we have a different local ID. This system mitigates those two. And then at level 1 would say like, watch out what's going on. There's 2. We go into this with our credentials through the NICES business portal and then say, no, Victoria Curry from the city is also Victoria Curry from Millbrook. And then there's a button that is kind of exciting. And then that happens. This is the Cognos reports that I was talking about. And then other elements of the level 1 feeds. Down here is all of the student answer sheets. So when kids go to take the regents and they see their name and information like that, that would be on there. So that's kind of like the only other thing they're showing here is scaled scores. So those come from another, so that's like where they do the cut points to say that you're 1, 2, 3, or 4 on the New York State assessments, or regents, you're a 1 through 5. Where that comes from is this program here in the DLM. In the notes, if you're very interested in this, I also linked. So if you're like, wow, I want to learn more about scale scores and such, they're linked in the speaker notes in this presentation into it. And if you're on the data committee, we can definitely go over and talk more about it. So that's basically level 1, looks great. And then it moves out to level 2. And level 2 is a drill down or a warehouse that can drill down to show every single student for every single required SIRS report. So everything that you're required for, it's like a huge dashboard and it shows every single facet of reporting. And that's what Laura would certifies at the end of the year to say like, yes, we had the X amount of L's. We have, yes, in fact, we have this amount of males and females and graduates and such. So all that goes in there. Let's see. Testing. Oh, this is computer-based testing. Stuff is generated from there. That makes sense. And then this piece over here, there's some work, especially in level. So TA used to be where teachers went in every year and they verified their employment, their salary, their certification they're working under, their class size, and any classes that they had. So if they taught multiple classes, they would verify that they had it and they could go in and manipulate that system. 2 years ago, they stopped that and they had us feed. So from here, from the source system, we were feeding TA. So the teacher would go in and they would have to certify and say like, yes, this is me, this is my salary, this is my job. But they wouldn't have the ability to change. So what they would have to do is say, oh, that's wrong, come back to us at district, and then we'd have to change it in the source system, and then it'd have to flow back down to here. Now, this whole system is completely removed, which is like, you know, so Bed's Day forms and all this stuff that's happened in schools forever, now that's not even existing. And for teachers to verify, there's a few more reports in level 2, which we can talk about in the data committee. And it's basically to ensure that the course listings that we have, our teachers are certified for. So if they're teaching Algebra 2, they have Algebra 2 cert and so forth. And so it's like just because we put that in here, we have like maybe a favorite person teaching this thing, it still has to combine with teach to be like, no, they in fact have this active valid cert. So just a check. So that in a nutshell is the process of the big data that's working. The Mid-Hudson Regional Information Center did a lot of the work for us in years past. So they have changed their service. And so now I am doing this work for us. And so there's a few different elements and places where our district data committee, we will look at it together to verify. I'll talk about that process in a couple slides. And then there is some other committees administratively that we will
form to make sure the data is accurate and complete to the best of our knowledge.
So how much manual, the story we used to get, 3, 4, 5 years ago was this thing, we need so many people to keep this data up to date because it gets to this thing, because this looks like really nice. It's nice, easy flow, nothing breaks. It just, everything's in its place.
Yeah.
And then what we were told was, we would get a phone call from Albany, says there's a mismatch in your data. You gotta go in there, you gotta pull this out, you gotta change that. Then you gotta give it to somebody else because it can't be the same person who pulled it, that puts it back in. And it was just, and we kept saying, oh, like, where are all these systems and why do they, try to think of a nice word, why are they so bad? That it takes all this work to keep it going.
So, yes, so I would say, so in theory, but in theory, could everyone in the state have the same student information system and then an API be written and it go out to the state, right? Like an automatic, right? Is that a world we could live in? Yes, but we are, free market and able to buy whatever SIS we want. So some people have school tool, others you can choose different vendors. So we have that, and then we have we've standardized the extracts. They're called e-scholar templates that come in here. So yeah, could it be a lot easier and done better? Absolutely. I will say one benefit or one other side to it being this way, being really manual. We literally upload the CSV file, so it's as manual as this kind of labor can get, I guess. One good thing about it is that you actually do look at it all. So if we did have auto uploads and we lived in that dream world, there would be no like stop, breathe, and think and like what are we sending up? So it's kind of good. And I guess every RIC has their own zero. So that's just also like another setup from the state. So yeah.
So we'll talk more in the data
Yeah.
committee.
Okay, great.
Question.
All right, cool. So yeah, just briefly again, this is basically another version of what we just looked at. So we have our systems here. And then in here, this is in this center section. These are all like the things that would be inside level 2. So these are all the things that we verify. So student demographics. New this year is non-binary gender reporting for staff and students. Program facts, day calendar, daily attendance. Daily attendance is huge. I think I'm trying to remember. They're like nearing tens of thousands of line entries because they don't only take negative attendance, they take negative and positive now. So that's a huge, and you see this old level 0. If anyone's really interested, level 0 is very cool because it's built by people. And so you can see the machine crying when you're putting these lines wild. So if you're into that, it makes me smile and I'm waiting for it to evaluate. So yeah, student daily attendance is big. But again, when you're now reporting every single day where the students are, it's more accurate, right? And so another piece that we'll look at is chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism marries with the demographics, which is nice. You can kind of see like, okay, we have a few chronic absent students. Like now, what's their story, right? Like what can we do to better help them? Because it's not just about the numbers, right? Like especially in a place like Millbrook, it's so obvious that the numbers represent real people, right? In time and space, and it's our job to do the best we can for them and help them. So things like attendance is like, whatever, but it's like, no, it's like we want to make the best possible schooling life for them. So yeah, so that'll be something that we look at that's awesome. And then in here is all of this teacher demographics, the courses that we offer, diploma type. We get from Dutchess Folksies if we send students, the career and technical education credentials that students get on their diplomas or on their graduation record. So all that goes here. There's that new moment, it serves 328 and 329. Yeah. And they show those out of cert reports. So if we did have a teacher and like the course code was just wrong and off by a number or something like this, there's a report that shows us that and we can fix that.
So that's kind of that. We also have another component here too, our Ed Vistas. I'm sure you're very familiar with the vendor. They have Staff Track. So they have other, an upload that we do that would show teacher and principal evaluation. So those scores also go to the state from there. So I kind of put them over here because they're not really a source system, but they kind of are at the end of the year. And so they're used in that way. They also have great data reports and data mate for the testing. So if we were to go into that, I have that information here. So there's a lot of data. That's just basically what I was trying to communicate with this. And there's a timeline to all of it. So you do need someone in the role who's hyper organized, kind of into it and following the flow. Otherwise you do get those auto emails from NYSID like, hey, you didn't put this thing in. So these are some different elements that we will do in our committee. I have special ed, and then I didn't write the who yet because that will be fleshed out further as the year goes on. So I just put the domain and then the different types of things that will go on. Oh, good. And so, and pre-K 2 is kind of special. They have all their own data reporting requirements. They're actually nearing the same amount of work as the school system itself. So having a pre-K program is a huge lift. And just stating that for the record. So we can look at all that information too. So special education reporting, regents, accountability is just information about graduation, grades and things like that. Staff reporting. So it's tenure we didn't go over, but that goes in there too. Cohort reporting. So cohort reporting, I haven't really heard of, it hasn't been talked about so much in the last year. Obviously our attention has been elsewhere, but with those ESSER reports and knowing your cohorts and knowing where those scores are generated from, that's super interesting. And so when we get new cohort information or ESSA information, we can go with that.
So do we have the COVID stuff? You know, hey, this kid is, you know, they were saying their child's been out 4 times. I mean, can we look at their, you know, where are they every day? Are the other kids that are in their same location getting sick? I mean, do we have that kind of information that we could just go in and analyze and try to figure out why why this kid is getting, positive 4 times, or I guess he's quarantined. I don't know that doesn't mean he's positive, but or she.
Right. Yeah.
So that's all in here someplace.
That's not in this section, but but it is in the purview of data that we have, and we can absolutely and should do that work. I think looking at it a bit, that would be helpful. L reporting, so we have that, or NYSA SLET, NYSA TEL, interrupted education, migrant, immigrant, all those different categories, these different funding sources that we have. Actually, we have a wonderful L department here. They do a lot of work with that, met with them a lot, so they're very well versed in all the elements they need to do. So they're awesome. State assessment reporting, so we're probably really familiar with that if you're retesting regions. And then tech reporting is new. There will be more coming out. So this is kind of like a place where Elliot and my worlds collide. So the digital tech survey, you probably heard about last year. It's here this year in an even bigger way. And that there's no information yet as far as what the state is going to do with the data. However, the data itself is quite good, and we here can do a lot with it. So that's just to say, like, the information will be per child. And I think we're using an EdVistas product to glean that information, and it will let us know what kinds of devices they have, if they're personally owned or from the school, internet access. And the thought is that it's going towards a national conversation of making broadband access for everybody. But that's like really big picture, but I think even though it's a have to, it'll be helpful. Okay, so here's a little piece. So data verification is a process, not an event. So this is a little monthly internal process that I've found some success with prior to being here. So it's here, these are Google Sheets. So every single building has school tool and every single building has staff that works that SIS or Student Information System school tool. So they input the information. A simple typo, right, will cause a data error to happen. And my thought in making this little simple system is to let folks know in advance when they'll be hearing from me about this kind of event. That's because sometimes data can be emotional, as surprising as that is, seems non-emotional, but people, you take pride in your work. And if there's something that needs to be changed, it's like, oh, what did I do? And it's like, no, like you're human, of course you can do a typo, So I let staff know from every building and special education department and HR department, like these will be the dates in the year that you'll be contacted. So expect an email on these dates, plan, a little work time or whatever, so there's no surprises. And I do my best to cut and paste the errors from 0 in there and then put them in human language for what I think can fix them. And then I tell staff, like, if you can't fix it, like, we'll make a meeting and we'll do it together. So this is a new internal process. And it's nice too, because then the spreadsheets at the end of the year will show, like, where are we seeing like errors from?
So do you have a longer term plan to automate this stuff, to automate, instead of, once a month, we look at what's wrong, stop them from putting in bad information, if they have to match the name, why not pull the name and put it in for them? Do you have a longer term plan in mind to go automate, not just the movement of this stuff, but to actually automate the, as they're putting it in, make sure it's not wrong and fix it if you can.
Some of it's really nuanced, like an example would be, we had a student exit and they exited to go to private school. And there's like 3 different codes they can put in. And one clerical support person put in a code, which is correct. But because of the child's identification in another domain, so they have more than just gen ed. So because of that, they couldn't use that code. There is no reason that I would ever want someone to like memorize the SIRS manual or something like that. It's a lot. So it's just
I'm saying it, actually have it fill it in for them, or make sure that, once they've done these things, put some rules in place and say, I'll go check this and this and this and this, and tell you, they must have rules that kick these out on a monthly basis. Take these rules and try to automate them as they're putting the stuff in, so we don't have all this, manual intervention.
Yeah, the rules come from SIRS manual, and SIRS manual is updated, every couple months or so. But yeah, I guess, you could make common, like, this is a general thing, hey, make sure you put this in. So that's kind of like a catch-all for what we're putting in. This is a catch-all for what's coming out. So we have another, we have the district data team, and then we have another layer of administrative data review, which is where we'll have building leaders go over like these X amount of students are chronically absent. Did you know that? Is that true? To actually review, like, did you know that information, or was it just another human error? So these are this is the flow that I'm proposing. We can definitely add or subtract from it, but this is what I thought would be a great kind of starting agenda for the district data committee work across the year. So I put COVID as a standing item, so I think that would be prudent for us to look in that way. For the first one is orientation, and just deciding as a collective, like what we'll look at, or if there's an interest in one direction or the other, we could make that happen. The second meeting will be enrollment, regents, and then you'll see this going across 3 times: IXL boy or beginning of year, IXL boy middle of year, and then IXL boy or end of year. And so these 3, this is a new piece. And I'll pivot and get to that in the next slide, but just keep that in mind that that's special and really great. We'll have January regents, curricular maps and trackers, scatter plot. Scatter plot comes out of publicly released data. It's a special feature inside level 1, and allows us to look at similar schools, which is fascinating. So for scoring for graduation, you can like look at similar schools in the area and in the state. Create partnerships for teachers or admin to work on different goals. So I also put suspension data and the SEC reports, the school safety report. So just to know that. End of year, of course, will end with end of year certification of all of those different surge reports. Summer school, and then of course, August. These dates to note during the summer, but August would go for graduation rate, and just to know, and then of course, pre-K enrollment for the next year. So to me, that's a sensible flow, but we'll change it. We'll amend together this week. Okay, so this I wanted to make sure I put a nice little GIF on the over here. This is the good stuff. This is the fun stuff about data that goes on in the district. So this is IXL is a program that kind of gives a probe or diagnostic look at students' capability in ELA and math. So IXL is not new this year, but new this year, we have done this pre-K through 12 probe. So we've set up to have each child in the district have the snapshot. The information that it will give teachers is one piece of instructional decisions that they make. So in the Elm and Alden, they're running MTSS programs, which I'm sure you'll hear tons about this year, or personalized learning, or WIN, where they put students into leveled ability groups and they instruct them based on their need. So IXL is one of the metrics that's used in determining that. And it's really wonderful to see the extracts out. So if there's interest in that, we can of course look at that on Thursday as well. The information that comes out, because every single child took it and we're all on that same extract, is really helpful. And so it's just one of many. Other information we have, SRI is a way that our grades 5 and middle school get Lexile level or reading level. And then we have Fontes and Pinnell and Teachers College running records for Elm and Alden to determine reading levels of students. So this is another very important instructional metric that's used. It actually drives all the ELA instruction at the lower levels. So it's needed and there. Another piece is high frequency word lists. Those are used through both elementaries, obviously leaning to more at Elm than Alden. And down here, I just put that we have DataMate. That's just a tool that Advista has to run the 3 through 8 testing through, and it helps. It does a few more gap analysis and things of that nature than level 1 does. So that's a nice tool that I mentioned that. So all these things together, plus this idea of a curriculum-based measure. So that's the idea that Regents and 3 through 8 testing give an item analysis or a gap analysis per standard. Great. A lot of them look really pretty now too. We can look at them, they're awesome. But the problem with them is that it only happens once a year. Your Regents, maybe you could say 3 times a year, but really it happens once a year, right? And so for an instructor, they're getting them oftentimes even the next school year. So that cohort is gone, and you have this data, and you might not be able to make it as actionable as you would like. So curriculum-based measures are a way that you can create instructional probes throughout the year, whether it's every 6 weeks or 10 to 15 weeks, and they can be based on standards. So what that will do, if you run a simple spreadsheet with standards going across, student scores underneath, you can make your own item analysis. And a teacher could say, in a team, they can look at a cohort and see where a deficit or a strength would be. So that kind of information is so valuable because it's actionable based on the students that are sitting in front of you. So we have CDMs in different grade levels and all, so I guess we're another the other side of my job comes in the PD part. So we're all working to make these in all content areas. So I'm pivoting here a little bit from DDC, obviously, into instructional data. This is just an easy way to look at the large brushstrokes of work that happen in instructional data. So none of this is have to, this is all just really good practice. And it's happening here in this district, so it's really great. So data trackers. So that's what the term that we use for basically spreadsheets that takes data from all of these places, plus the state data, and the student demographics, which is new last year, and puts them in one spreadsheet so that you can see the fullest picture of a child and the fullest picture of a cohort possible. They're really great. The next piece is a curriculum map. So curriculum mapping is just a simple way of acknowledging and memorializing what you teach across the year in a subject area. So curriculum maps are what we call tier 1 instruction, right? So that's just like the general curriculum. And so our teachers are making them for each subject. That's a bigger PD focus of this year. Getting, even though they've existed here in Millbrook for quite some time, they are meant to be a verb, they're meant to be actionable and change over time, right? You want to go back and put things new or something that, you know, you think could work differently over time. They will be horizontally aligned and vertically aligned so that you can see a department grow all the way through 12. And then hopefully in the future, the end result of that would be like a diagonal. So you would have, like here in the middle school, all of the maps, a 6th grade science teacher would be aware of what an 8th grade math teacher is doing. And somehow the curricula can align and you would know that information. Underneath the curriculum map is assessment calendar. That's kind of the same idea. Thinking about our practice as pedagogues and thinking about what do we do to assess that we know that the kids are learning. What do our assessments look like? Are they all multiple choice tests? Are they all essays? If so, how can we make the experience more authentic and exciting for kids? So again, it's just about having school-wide and system-wide conversations so that you know what each other are doing. So that if I'm assigning 10 essays a year and Elliot's assigning 10 essays a year, then we think, oh geez, our students get 20 essays a year. Is that really necessary? Or do we get to see them work through it? You know, obviously essays are great, but it's good to vary that. So that's that. Data teams. And then the end, of course, we have next generation standards and New York State standards. The rollout in that has been pushed back, pushed back, pushed back. This is our first year of implementation of that. So here they are. So all of this is good conversation given the new standards. This is a little look at what the trackers look like. So you'll see here, this is turned on its side, but it is just a spreadsheet. And it has the high frequency words, the independent reading levels, which is the middle school would be the SRI, but for this tracker that you're looking at, it would be Teachers College or Fountas and Canal. So all of this information is on these homegrown trackers. A new add is the student demographics. So with simple filtering, this is actually a pivot table, I just made it cute. But you can take then the teacher, L, race, gender, and you can filter through all the independent levels and it makes a nice, I call it a movable GUI. It's just maybe not as fancy as a GUI, but it is a dashboard for teacher teams to look at and see how the cohort is progressing across the year. So free, it's awesome. It's a wonderful thing to be able to work with Google Sheets and yeah, and I guess make this data as accessible as possible to teacher teams. We did last year expand the F&P metrics to help our teachers. So it's not just saying the letter. Some of you might know it's like, oh, my child reads an H, right? And we had that on the tracker for forever. It was a long-standing practice in this district. So last year we added on comprehension, we added accuracy, and we added if it was fiction or nonfiction. That way it gives the teachers an even bigger, look under the hood. This will probably go into in another board meeting altogether, but there's a lot of work, like I said earlier, with MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support and personalized learning, and this idea of a win period, or what I need period. So at the elementary schools, there's been the creation through a spreadsheet of automated parent letters. So that's a beautiful way that we just use Google product, and they're a non-for-profit school-based extension to make a mail merge for families. So that's really cool and great to that kind of thing. We can do that in the data group too. This is just a general look at how curriculum maps are a pretty simple tool to use. You just have the months going across the top, and you have the subject area going down the side in these pastel colors, and then the blue shows the assessment. That's curriculum map in a nutshell. Okay. So here, this is just another example of an assessment map. And then here we have, I think, all admin trained in data-wise for data teams. So this is just a series of protocols that's commonly used in schools. I wouldn't say we have a strict adherence to it, but we kind of take some great practices from this and make it our own. So it goes around, I put here for you all tonight, it's essential for the Board of Ed and admin to bring the focus for the school year. But for data teams to run, they can be great. Any grade level team will do great work, highly motivated professional people coming together to look at student work. Of course, they'll do something wonderful with it. But for us to set the stage for them to say, our focus is going to be literacy, our focus is going to be attendance, whatever our focus is going to be, it's nice to give the data teams an overarching goal to work for. So maybe that could be something that we come back around to in the future. DataWise comes from Harvard. It's very exciting, and I'm sure you've heard about it in the past. And then here, just a moment to talk about next gen standards. We have these, again, Millbrook spreadsheets that have each strand for math and ELA, and with these little expanders, they allow for teachers to be able to see the progression. So this has helped us kind of hone the way that we speak about student work. So if we're to say a student is below grade level standard, but when we use this tool, we instead can say they are at first grade level or kindergarten level, rather than just using broader brushstrokes. So that's been helpful tool. Here's just a little 5-year planning that I'll take you forward to. This is kind of the overarching my focus for each building for the year. So here we have Elm. And it by no means is to say any of these things is going to be complete, just where we're kind of getting the ball rolling or continuing work in each of these domains. This is Alden, and you'll see this because I'm one person. But of course, we will get to all of them. Middle school and high school. Oh, yes. I did want to make a mention, maybe we can show another time, it's very exciting, but we did develop a curriculum and instruction website. It's in-facing and it houses all these documents. So like, if you're an AIS teacher, you have trackers from each grade, you have curriculum maps from each grade. So the website's a really nice place, very cleanly allows for teachers to go and get all these materials that they work with.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good. I get to torture you on Thursday?
Yeah, it's like a real joy in my life, so.
We'll see.
You just set out a challenge.
All right.
So that means we're bringing them up.
Any questions?
Not until Thursday.
All right, Mike?
That's a tough act to follow.
Yeah.
So for September, there were 17 work days, 20 work days, 17 school days. So for medium duty jobs, there was 213 of them. For a little higher importance, there were 16. For emergency, there were only 2. For long term, there was 2, and for date specific, there was only 7. So some of the things that we did in that month was secure all the new bookcases to the walls at the Elm Library, ran new electric where needed, because it's a new library, we had to run new electric. Changed the hot water elements in the high school. We finished the new sliding doors for the L pre-K room. Serviced the dishwashers at the high school and the middle school. Repainted the Alden parking lot directional arrows. Replaced the motor and the bearing on the roof of the middle school kitchen and gas fan. Installed a new washer and dryer, temporary hookup for the fax class. Installed smart boards in middle school rooms 20 and 57. Replaced the 1.5-inch steam trap in the Elm boiler room. Ran some Cat 6 wires from the server room to room 201B at the high school. Finished a planting project in front of the middle school main entrance. Ran new electric and Cat 6 to the new science room 21 and the 29 in the middle school. Measured in line the softball fields for modified soccer. Ran new Cat 6 wire and starter on the electric for the high school huddle camera. Installed a seal plate and fill to straighten the grade for the new MS garden fence. Remember in the corner of the building where it dropped down? Well, we didn't want the fence to drop down, so we put something there and we filled it in and we planted grass, so the fence will be on all one angle. So it'll look a lot nicer. Replaced an impeller and a motor on a condensate pump at Alden. Replaced the hot water circulator pump in the middle school boiler room. Installed the new full-size window decals on the MS locker rooms where it says Blazers. Do you see that? And also on the first and third levels over the doors. We built a new 6-foot by 12-foot border and filled it with dirt and topsoil for the high school butterfly garden, which they actually planted today. And they started their thing today. And then when I talked to her about that, is we came up with 6-foot by 12-foot. It's a 4-inch raised bed. And then every year, we're gonna add 6 foot on each side. We did it in the middle of the cafeteria windows, about 10 feet out from the building in the high school. So when you walk through the cafeteria, you'll see it. And every year, we'll extend it on both sides, so it always stays in the middle. Replaced the motor and bearing in room 216 at the high school. The framing is done and the electric started in the PPS offices. There was no oil use in September, and classrooms cleaned and disinfected during the school day was a total of 34 classes for kids that got sick, and we had to go in and clean and disinfect. So it'd be safe for the kids to go back in. So 6 in the high school, 14 in the middle school, none at Alden, and 14 at Elm, but this was only for September. So,
Mike, don't we use in one of the buildings or more than one, fuel oil to heat the hot water, or is it all
nope,
electric?
they're all electric. We changed one a year for 4
good.
years. They're all electric.
I thought we still had one. Good.
Nope, you told me to get
That'll
away.
make it easier when we get rid of it.
You told me to get away, right? To get away.
Very good. Any questions for Mike? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
All right, Holly.
Hello there. Thank you for having me. So in food service, we are seeing a significant increase in our lunches served between 9 and 20%, depending on building, from just the 21st of September to the 14th of October. We still maintain the same staff that we started with and ended the summer with. We were able to hire 1 additional. Breakfast at the middle school is up 3% in that same time frame. and at the high school, 14%, largely around their study halls being back in the cafeteria. And they cook to order style service that they have there in the morning. We are continuing to struggle some with data for Meals Plus entry.
For what? I'm sorry.
Meals Plus, it's our point of sale service, point of sale system that we use. But we're continuing to work on it. Supply chain is a significant issue. I estimate that I've received less than 8% of what we normally receive from OGS alone in September. So that would only be brown box, only be the brown box part of commodity. We have received letters from our vendors that they are not able to hold their pricing at the bid level, which then will come down to us at the bid level. If the distributor can't hold, if the manufacturer can't hold the bid, then often the distributor can't, which would then trickle down to us and our prices would increase. First time in 28 years of school food service, I am seeing distributors using a force majeure, which actually breaks the contract of bidding and allows the manufacturers to increase their pricing, and then also the distributor, so that they're not losing on every case that they bring.
What's nice is they're always willing to drop the price too if prices go down. Sorry.
They actually are being very fair. Let's put it that way.
So, I mean, I think we know that, like, the price, do we know where we are from a budget standpoint? Are we 10% over where we should have been spending? Are we, we're holding okay, but we think it's gonna be 20% over? How are we doing?
We are finalizing that now, Ashley and I.
I'm sorry.
Ashley and I are finalizing that now.
Okay.
They actually they have all of the paperwork they need to finalize September, with the exception of the claim form, largely around utilizing the point of sale in the beginning of the year. So there needed to be some correction up there, which happened today. So hopefully I should be able to put the claim into NICID and then.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I
find
know
out
it's
our
early,
revenues.
but I'd really like to see, personally, I'd really like to see where we are, to see, are we gonna get hammered at the end of the year? Are we close, but, we're afraid? Okay, sorry, didn't mean to.
That's okay. Fortunately for Millbrook, there were entitlement dollars left in June, and I will not leave anything on the table. So it was all brought here. So like I've just learned that chicken nuggets, chicken patties will not be manufactured from Pilgrim's Pride. There's only 4 options that we can bring in. So, we're just trying to go day by day. So far, we're doing okay. We have had a few menu changes, but other than that, I think my biggest realization was that our distributors asked us to come in and receive orders on Columbus Day, which I did. And one of our distributors brought less than half my order. I think I've had like 80 cases ordered, and less than half came. And some of what did come was a substitution, which wasn't acceptable and had to be returned. So that, and we're seeing a lot of that too. I did check on Pizzeria Pizza. And Duchess Boasties did receive only one bid. Normally, we have 2 or 3 people that submit bids that meet child nutrition specs on Pizzeria Pizza. In the bid, they stipulated that they would provide service to only 4 districts that are represented by Duchess Boasties. And it was cited as a staff reduction price increase, which limited the options. So that may be a discussion that we would want to have in the food service subcommittee, how much we want to delve into the possibility of getting it back into the schools and what that looks like. And then new to us is the potential Universal School Meal Program, Act of 2021, that's being presented by Kirsten Gillibrand at the moment. But what good has come out of COVID for food service is it's showing the need for school meals, the change in children and family food insecurities that we may not be privy to normally. And then as administratively, it puts an end to a discussion about money and children's, what's available on a child's account on the lunch line. And reduces those delinquencies. And there actually is legislation to reimburse schools for negative balances left on lunch accounts from previous years, so that so that slate is wiped clean and all children would be eligible to participate or not at no cost to the family or child. And then, of course, our summer food service would be expanded. So,
Guys, the BOCES received the fresh bid for pizza stipulating service to only 4 districts. Did they say like, is that like, we're only doing 4 districts and BOCES has to figure out which 4
no, they
districts?
stipulated where they were willing to deliver. So they did local, I mean, they're out of Poughkeepsie.
We're not one of them.
We're not. They're out of Poughkeepsie and they stayed
Okay.
on that,
Okay.
on the southern.
We need to, this thing with Senator Gillibrand, we need to keep our eyes on that because at some point this year, there's a legislative breakfast. They usually, well, they invite them all in and nobody shows, but I think she was there, and I think Serena that were there not last year, but year before. So if we have the opportunity to go to that, we can push on this because that would simplify a lot.
They also have to work on getting this stuff here. I mean, it's great that they can sit here and say they're going to give us free food, but
Yeah,
I
exactly.
have a bad word. I want to say, where is the food?
Well, by the time it gets off the ship and out in Los Angeles, it's probably rotted anyway. All right, very good. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. All right, let's see, where do we go next? Old business, none, financial. I don't know, Mike seems to like it here. You guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Victoria. Well, I don't think, she pointed over there. Victoria. She didn't. All right, financials and warrants. See you, Mike. Bye, Victoria. Bye, wherever you went.
Bye, Victoria.
Do a motion,
So,
move a second.
I'll second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any against? This is the motion regarding the audit committee and the stuff that was presented last time. I think it was last time. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second? No?
Technology.
Sorry, it's what I'm doing
Should we have a
is
second?
happening.
Okay, thanks. Any discussion? All in favor? Any against? All right. Again, sorry for last minute, but I thought this was important enough to jam it into the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve these tutors?
So.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any against? All right, first reading of the 4,000 policy. Before we go into that, maybe I'm not, at least from my standpoint, not being clear. And maybe this opened up well before we started this, but I can't review, even the one that says it's modified. I can't review it and have to read every line and read this line and this line. They should be in markup mode. If you delete a word, it should show with the line through it. If there's a note, put the note over here, or if you delete something, you want to put a note on it. If you add something, it's in a different color and it stays there until we say, yeah, that's cool, accept all changes and move forward. I can't do this. I mean, and I'm just speaking from my own personal life. I just cannot. I don't know what changed.
It's this one,
The
that's the
second
chapter.
copy.
I know, but that just has notes in it that says the policy committee, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't, you don't see the change, at least, maybe I'm just looking at it.
When I opened it on my home computer in Word, it showed up.
Yeah, I'm looking at it on my phone and I can see the cross.
See, I don't see any, I'm looking, I looked at it on this.
I don't see it on
Like,
this.
I don't see,
Yeah.
I mean, so like, I see
Yeah.
like this. I see like this.
Well,
I just had it.
So
so do we have word on that one?
No.
So it shows the change. This is Word.
All right, well, anyway,
If someone with
the
a
other,
Word PDF, it would come through or something for us.
sorry,
If someone with a Word PDF, it would come through the changes.
I don't think so.
Because on my home computer, I couldn't
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah. and- but
Well,
still
all
not-
right,
still
if
track
if
changes.
they're there, I'll just start reading them from my other computer.
Try Word.
Yeah, see John Rudy all over these.
The one thing that I did notice though was
Oh, here it is.
the removal of the 10 days. I don't see, first of all, there, even in a good time, we couldn't do that. I mean, I don't know how we would have enough tutors that if a kid's home with a cold, we have to give them an hour of tutoring. That's impossible.
Where did the change come from?
The policy committee. So, I mean, John, and I don't know why the 10 days was taken out. I mean, and I'm open to, you want to say 5
That's what I
or,
was gonna say.
you know, but just nothing. We'll never do it. We'll always be, you know, there'll be somebody that'll be angry with us.
It's one day and they're out sick, then you gotta scramble.
Yeah.
But can we ask like the people who do the for a living, like what would you think? It's like would 3 days out be something, like what would your opinion be? Like 2 days, they might be okay.
Yeah, and that's really hard to answer.
It does depend on the child, the grade. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
right. So also students with disabilities for
Oh,
a
yeah.
period of time, they actually show regression. You know, we monitor that stuff after breaks and whatnot. So it might be, I don't know if we want to differentiate, but it might be a priority to, you know, have a shorter length of time for those students,
Yeah.
just because the impact on their actual educational progress could be much greater.
Right.
That's a reality, right?
Right.
So in many districts, it is 10 days, and that's projected. So if there's a reason why a student is projected, say they're having surgery and they're projected not to return, we may be able to arrange the tutors even in advance or even within like 3 days or whatever, for a suspension that we know will go beyond a certain amount of time. That could be true as well, or we can arrange the tutors up front.
Is there a way for us to basically say, you know, 10 days is our absolutely. I mean, if they're out 10 days, they've got to have a tutor. We're gonna do it 100% of the time. I know that's hard to say, but we're gonna try. But anything under there, we'll do the best we can. I mean, I don't know if there's a way to say that, because it shouldn't be, if one of their kids came home, was out for 10 days, came in for a day, and was out another 10 days, we can't say, well, you're still not out for 10 days. Is there a way for us to just say it differently? I mean, I don't know. Were you in the policy committee? Are you on the? I'm trying to figure, I don't know why it was removed to begin with.
It could be because 10 days is a long time,
Yeah.
right? So it might have been an intention of bringing it under the 10-day mark and maybe more flexible because of something like COVID. I have no idea. That is true. Like 10 days is a very long time for a student to go without any instruction for sure. In a case like you're saying, Carrie, if the student has even an intermittent ailment that could require them to be out for periods of time, we could use like a 504 type thing where we're, even though policy is this, their 504, their own individual needs may require something else, even if it is an intermittent type of illness. Let's just say.
What do you think is a reasonable, is it 5 days? Could we do 5? I mean, I know that's ridiculous because we could have, tomorrow we could have 75 kids out for 10 days and not be able to take care of it. And maybe that was the point of taking the 10 days out. Maybe it was like, well, if we don't fall out a number, we can pretty much do it however we want.
But it must have been pre-COVID that John did this, so of course, not thinking that COVID was gonna be a problem. You can't, at the time, it might have sounded good, but things have
Well,
changed.
can you put in something like when resources are available, it's 3 days for special ed and 5 days for normal students?
Yeah,
I'm not saying those
know.
words. I'm just
I mean,
saying.
you could definitely differentiate between the two, but that's something that I think would have to go through legal in terms of like.
Yeah, well,
I think you have to specify academic dates.
yeah. So I mean, first for that one, I'd like you guys to go back and talk to Julie or somebody at the lawyers.
Pull it, send it back to be reworked.
Yeah. Now, is there anything else, anybody, I tried my best to, like I said, I didn't see the changes. So I tried to look through it, and that was the only thing that really jumped out on me. Did anybody else have anything else they were worried about or wanted moved out? Because I'd like to, somebody said 1995, these things have been open for, a long time. So I would like to get them closed so we can open them back up, start changing them again. So if nobody has anything else, if you guys could somebody take it back to the lawyers, make sure. All right, 5,000. I got mad and didn't actually do it because I was like, I can't see the changes. Anybody have anything in the 5,000?
I couldn't, and I was probably looking at the non-changed one, so.
And Google
Not
Docs,
to
you
be
can actually see the
confusing.
changes too. Let's just say, yeah.
Doesn't
Here I
show.
can.
Doesn't show here.
I couldn't see it on my, I did it on my iPad, I couldn't.
Anyway,
I-
so the ones that are in there, there's one on the top in public
I know,
content. That's the one we're voting on. The one below is really the one that has all the changes that becomes the one above.
Right.
So
right. I think I'm looking at the 5152, so we talked about it before, the non-tuition, I'm sorry, non-resident tuition. And looking at the one, I think at the correct one, I don't see any changes in here, but didn't we talk about amending it to state that we don't accept non-resident tuition? The way
I
it
thought
stands now.
I thought Julie told us not to do that, and I don't remember why. I thought it was something to do with you basically you know, it's a practice of the district to not accept it, but, you know, if for some reason, we wouldn't have to go back and change our entire policy if we wanted to. But I can't imagine why. I mean, we could pull this one too and basically say, we don't do it. I mean, because it would kill us, I think. I mean, we would have, especially with Millbrook's, you know, reputation on special education and flexibility of special education programs. I think we'd end up with everybody in Dutchess County that wanted to try to get into our district.
To be clear, they would be paying general ed price regardless of
Right.
the cost of whatever
Right.
special ed program they require.
Right, I mean, we would, I think, I mean, maybe nobody would be interested, but I would think, I know that we get a lot of calls about, so what does it cost me to send my kid to Millbrook? So do we want to push that? Actually make that specific in the policy, because we can pull this one too.
Yeah, and this one also, it was different because it doesn't have a time stamp on it, like the last one has a semester.
Right,
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I was
Yeah.
noticing that as well.
Right.
And it's interesting, the way this reads, right, it didn't have the semester in there. And then I'm reading for future residents, so as long as someone has a signed contract, they can, to build or buy a house, they can enroll their students. Is there any check on that? I mean, it seems that that part needs to be
well, I know, I mean,
amended as well.
people used to have submitted, you know, they have a post office box on the road and they own a piece of land. And they've tried that, and I know that was shut down. I think people had contracts to build a house with a due date, and I think that was accepted, but I'm not really sure.
And this piece of it might be, because we just kind of went through something with this with someone, and it's when you expect to become, so if you have your closing date, so we just went through that with Margot, but we can bring it up with Margot again, but there might be some legal reasons.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, those are really that in the 5,000, that's the most important. I mean, there's a lot of important stuff, but that's the most important to get right. Same with the 4,000. So why don't we, and unless anybody has a problem, we'll pull these, ask Julie to take a look, or Margot or somebody, and get those timeframes and be a little more specific that we don't do that. All right, well, that went fast. All right, question from Paul. Okay, so do we have anything on?
No.
Okay. All right, board facilities committee, like I said earlier, I mean, I know this is really a drag. Sort of a side issue, if you go into your school calendar, if you can give Cheryl access to your calendar, so if she has to move a meeting or, you know, schedule a meeting, she actually has the ability to get on your calendar. I mean, it's up to you if you don't want
I
it.
didn't know she did. I didn't know that she did. I don't
Sorry.
even know.
What's your school, what do you mean your school calendar?
You know,
What's that
what, like, if you're Millbrook, Jennifer Carnecchia at millbrookcsd.org, there's a calendar that goes with that, a Google calendar.
Okay.
Setting the meeting invite doesn't just change it on the calendar.
So, if I get access to your calendar, if you're in committees that maybe, the committee chair is sending you an invite, then I'm not, putting it on a calendar, and you're getting two notices about it, or just so we're not duplicating.
Okay, oh, I didn't realize you didn't have access.
But it's, yeah, like I said, it's up to you. Cheryl can show you how to do it.
Okay.
But if you don't mind, anyway, so we need to get these committees rocking. Did the facilities committee meet?
No.
No.
Food service. Goals, we did start. Policy committee.
No, but we have things to do now.
But I did
I'm
put notes
actually-
in there for you to read
Yeah.
out updates that we did do.
We actually, on the policy committee, we owe you a date, right? Or dates that we can do it. Okay.
And on the policy committee, Jennifer, you wanted to step down to David? to
Well,
come on, or-
I had approached him just because I don't know if I would be the best candidate,
Okay.
but in his, David said, what does it entail? When do you meet? And I said, I have no idea because we haven't had any meetings yet. So I don't want to just say, David, can you do
You're not
it?
Looking
you're not on
at-
the policy committee.
I was.
I don't think so.
What?
I was. You went around and you were like, Jen,
I'm
can
on
you,
the
I don't have.
policy, you're on the policy, Laura's on the policy, and Cheryl's on the policy.
Oh, okay.
That's what's listed up there.
You can join.
But you can join.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a third.
You can take Perry Rice's
You're
spot.
interested.
If the meetings are later or not.
Pretty sure.
Or
Well,
That's it. Yes, they'll be remote. They won't be frequent. Yeah, I like that.
Sign up now.
Yeah, sign up now. It'll be late in the day. So,
Yeah,
sure.
policy,
Sign-
right?
Sign up if you can make it. You can make it.
Okay.
What'd you say?
We're talking about the policy committee?
Uh-huh.
Okay, you did ask me on our joint, I don't want to be on it, so.
Oh,
No,
you're
you were
saying-
clear that you didn't want to be on it at that.
But, maybe, so you were just kidding when you were like, okay, Jen, I thought I wrote it down. I have a big unhappy face right next to
Yeah, you don't write down everything I say.
I do.
Because that scares me.
it. I do.
No, so
Good.
it's,
Okay,
so
never
it's
mind.
David, Howard, Laura, and Cheryl.
Okay.
You see how-
This day is getting
you see how I
better.
did that without
Yeah.
Causing too much trouble.
Thank you.
All right,
guys.
cybersecurity.
So we're having to kick off with our auditing firm for a Google Ecosphere next week.
Okay.
So we'll schedule a meeting probably following that, somewhere around December, January, once we get that ball rolling and I have something to report back.
Okay. Data committee, we are meeting this week. That should be interesting. Leadership team. Chair and Paul Tobin. Oh, Laura's the chair and Paul Tobin. Safety committee.
We did meet. I will apologize. I did not invite Chris to our first meeting as the alternate, but I did send it. Did you get the packet the other day?
By email,
Yes.
I'll double check that, I don't.
Okay. So if not, I will send it again. I did not realize that you were the alternate, so I apologize for that. We did meet. We met on the 13th. We had participation from all 4 buildings, although I would like to see some additional participation from each building really. But we did have representation. We also had 3 law enforcement agencies here, which is great. So we had our SRO, we had the local Millbrook Police Department, and we also had representation from New York State Police. We reviewed annual goals for the team. We reviewed our drill schedule and our after action reviews. We began planning tabletop and rapid fire drills. So tabletop drill is basically a scenario is given, and then as the safety team is thinking on their feet and calling out exactly how they would behave in this given scenario, there's someone who is sort of like the moderator who is like, okay, so transportation just said that there's an accident, they can't get buses here for X number of times. So it's playing out all of these scenarios and seeing how you would react, how do you think on your feet, because we all know that these plans are great, except every single incident is different, it changes, it's dynamic, right? So you also have to be able to think outside of the plan when the plan becomes outmoded. Additionally, the rapid fire drills are something very similar, but like you walk into the hallway and you see a fire, what do you do, right? So it's like getting people used to, you are the incident commander until somebody with higher level of training comes onto the scene, getting people to think and act kind of thing. So we additionally will be walking through our reunification drill. Reunification is really the end to any type of incident where you make sure that a student is reunited essentially with their caregiver. So that is something that could happen here. It could happen at an alternate location. It could happen after many hours of an incident. So there's a lots of things that we need to think about. We need to think about a lot of cross training between buildings. And so we're going to actually walk through a reunification process with the district so that we can train staff and make sure everybody knows their given role in those scenarios. Additionally, we're working on the second steps of the threat assessment rollout. So to larger building teams, we have threat assessment teams trained in each building. That is, if any person known to the Millbrook Central School District makes any kind of threat to their safety or the safety of others, we do have a protocol for assessing that as a team. And then anytime that there's a substantive threat, that person, yes, there could be discipline or, something that goes along with it, but that person basically becomes a friend for life. So we're keeping an eye on them and making sure that we constantly have a finger on the pulse of how that person is doing. Additionally, we are meeting again in December. So we have October meeting, then in November, all the safety teams will meet and we'll be doing some drilling as in building teams. And then in December, we will meet as a district committee and unpack all of that work, and we'll keep going throughout this school year that way. In every single one of our meetings, we have an opportunity for the buildings to share out. So they're talking about any health and safety concerns with either the need for additional training or maybe the need for like facilities or technology support in safety. So we were able to do all that, and all of those things are being addressed between myself, Elliot, and Mike. That's really it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Technology committee.
So we will be sending out the invitations, hopefully this week. I just gotta firm up some, I wanted to get the guidance from the state on what the new tech plan is gonna be to map out the agendas. So we'll reach out to everybody that was involved last year for continued attendance. We'll see if anybody else wants to join, but really we're gonna be working backwards from the due date at the end of the school year to put together our revised tech plan based on the updates provided this summer, and also looking at continuing our goals and really digging deeper into our differentiated by grade level technology supports in terms of software and hardware issues. The first step of that being the touchscreen tablets we gave to our pre-K and K classes. We really want to look at what our youngest learners are using for instruction in terms of devices and software platforms. We're also working, Victoria and myself and Caroline are working in concert to perform a comprehensive software audit. We brought in a lot of things with COVID. They weren't all budgeted for. We moved around a lot of money to make teaching and learning happen during hybrid and remote learning. It's time to start figuring out what we're going to keep, what good things came out of that process. So those are our two big goals, and using those, the results of those goals to put together the new tech plan. So those will be going out this week, and we'll put those together for November and the rest of the year.
We got the COVID money though, so budgeted or not, a lot of that could be covered with COVID funds.
Very good point. And the only concern is the renewal cycle, replacement cycle for all things, right? These things get shorter and shorter lifespans every time we buy them. So looking at the things that'll last 7 to 10 years versus what'll last 2 to 3 years, and being able to project and graduate our budget slowly within the parameters of tax cap, that these things don't, and it's unfortunate, but a lot of districts have had that experience. They buy wonderful things, they last 5 years, and they can't replace them. And I don't want to fall into that trap.
Thank you.
And we also, as we look at what other options we might have for remote, semi-remote, let's make sure we fold that into discussion at the committee, because if we need to do it, we need to do it.
Agreed, and we do have a nice representation of teachers on the committee. I'd like to have more, but we certainly have teachers from every building at least last year, that I hope to come back and really be able to provide some viable feedback in that direction.
How about the wellness committee? Have we met?
No, we have not.
It's my fault. I owe.
No, it's okay.
No, I owe Cheryl.
Okay, now, is there anybody from the district that's in that group? It's not listed on here, that's why I'm asking.
Wellness?
So it's just,
Yeah,
it's
you
just
and-
Chris and I that would
yeah.
just sit around and talk, okay.
So
I mean,
How do you feel,
No, the wellness committee
No,
used to
there-
be, yeah, I used to, but it used to, Holly used to be in charge.
Yes.
It was done with nutrition, and that was the focus on wellness. Before then, our health teacher chaired it, so that I guess, it could be anybody. There's different facets it could actually take, but it all depends on who wants to, from the district.
What about one of our school psychologists?
Well, I think, I mean,
That's a good idea.
I would like
more of a
that,
mental
yeah,
and
I would
physical
like
health
that.
type of thing.
So
But it's-
I think we can probably have representation from our PPS team, but I would be happy to take it on.
You will have free time. You should do that. Jump right in. Come on over.
Actually, there was a representation,
No, it's fine. I mean-
Jennifer Obazak was on it for a while. So there was some representation way back, several years back.
And I think
But
with
I
the
think-
COVID conversation around additional mental health support,
Yeah,
we've also
of
had some
course.
conversations about somebody acting as like a, coordinating new services. So that person might step in, but for the meantime, I would be happy to get some resources together. We have some information about like a mental health audit that we can do. So we can just start there and
That's
then
great.
maybe grow the committee.
That's great.
Makes sense.
I'll do it then.
Yeah, I mean, and fold in look at mental wellness, physical wellness, and I do like the fact that the lunch program was a part, that was really the main focus, was the nutritional value and all that of the lunch program. All right. Dutchess County School Board had the first meeting at BOCES. It was remote, but first meeting, most of the district, it was really, they basically had it, opening day go. I mean, honestly, we are so lucky. There were districts that have had to have police escort people out. Pine Plains went back to all meetings remote because they were actually afraid of the people that were in the audience. There was a number of districts that have had to close a meeting over the summer, just basically adjourn it because there was no other way. And then it was odd because, and this is where it's a little silly because, we're as board members talking about how opening day went, or not opening day, but and we really have no exposure to day-to-day stuff. I mentioned before that Poughkeepsie said they've never had a case of COVID. Now, come on. I mean, they've had their few quarantines. And then I think Arlington, I forget, they had some number like, well, we quarantined like, I think it's 22 people. And I'm going, hell, we did that like last week. I mean, so, it's kind of always, most of them said that they still, everything looks good because the kids are back. They seem to be feeling better. I think the lady from Wappingers was talking about some kid that printed up a whole bunch of index cards and was sticking them in books as he walked down the hallway. But all in all, it sounds like most of the districts had a fairly, I guess what you would consider smooth these days, opening. They are looking for, and by the way, you're all, I know, everybody's got 100 things to do, but you're always welcome to tie into that. And what they do is they're asking right now, what is sort of the theme for 21, 22? A couple of years ago, before COVID, we did sustainable technologies. So, the Vassar Farm came in and talked about what they could do for our district. And there's always a meeting, which is really helpful, where they go over negotiating contracts. So it's usually the teacher's contracts and they'll go down and they'll say, here's where Wappingers is, this is what Arlington got, this is what, so we can sort of see what other districts are doing. And that's, I think that one's in April or March. But it was, like I said, it was just also meeting all the new board members that, people that didn't run or somebody that lost the election, you got new people on the board. But yeah, it was just the initial kickoff. And I'll try to, either Cheryl or I will try to forward we always get the presentations from those meetings, when there are some. And that's actually where one of the things they'll talk about soon is this legislative breakfast. So if we can get somebody there to harp on this lunch program, because that would really.
I'm the legislative liaison, so, you know, if I'm available.
Yeah, they, when they set the first one they set up, I think there was only one of the actual politicians that showed up. They all sent assistants, and the one politician sat in the audience and worked on, you know, their cell phone the whole time, so. But I think it's gotten better, although last year it wasn't at all, so. All right, the enrollment report for your entertainment, any questions? MEF report?
Okay.
I don't know, it was a meeting Thursday.
Yeah, I'm having our first in-person meeting Thursday.
All right, PTO report? Anything?
Not yet. I know they're doing some fundraisers because we got sent stuff home. I just wasn't able to connect with my contact there.
Superintendent's mileage report, nothing. We have the request for future agenda items. You see the 4 things that we're really looking at. Anything anybody wants to bring into one of these board meetings? Where have we, because we're talking about long-term financial goals, have we made any progress on getting this interim position filled?
Yes, it's part of the executive session.
Okay. All right, with that, I think, with that, do I have a motion to, well, before we're gonna go to executive session, if anything comes up that we need a motion on, when we come back to public session, we'll make that motion. So do I have a motion to go to executive session? Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right, how about 5 minutes? 10 minutes, maybe?